Being reincarnated as a slime just can't be that crazy, right? But what if I told you that simply being a slime would allow you to summon dragons, absorb demons, and literally bend reality to your own will? Yeah, turns out being a slime sounds kind of broken, and that's just a few of Rimuru Tempest's absolutely insane abilities that somehow make this simple slime one of the most broken characters in all of anime. And since it's actually kind of hard keeping track of all his quite complicated skills, plus the fact that he just keeps unlocking new ones all the time, this is your complete guide to Rimuru Tempest's abilities. And the best place to start is with Rimuru's signature and some of his most powerful abilities that he receives upon being reincarnated in the first place. The most important of which is the unique skill Predator. And while that sounds really freaky and weird, it's not. I mean, it is, but not like that, you know? Well, first, I mentioned that it was a unique skill. So what exactly is that? Well, to put it simply, it's a skill that is unique to a single type of creature or even an individual in this world that he's reborn in. And on top of that, all of these unique skills are usually granted to otherworlders. Which of course begs the question, what is an otherworlder? Well, otherworlders are anyone from a different place than the central world, which is just where this series takes place. And well, a lot of these otherworlders do seem to be from Japan somehow. I mean, I guess that's just what happens when it's a Japanese series, but still kind of weird. Back to the abilities. With that little explanation out of the way, I can finally explain Predator, Rimuru's most important ability beyond any doubt. For all of you familiar with Kirby here, Predator is essentially the copy ability. Rimuru as a slime is given the ability to absorb any item, creature, or their remains to gather all of their abilities and store it inside his extra-dimensional stomach. Which turns out is super important because one of the first and arguably most mind-bending things and world-changing things that Rimuru does is absorbing the storm dragon Vedra. Oh, cool, a dragon, you might now say. Nice. No, not nice. Absolutely amazing. To give you some perspective, Rimuru in the first episode of the series eats and gains the magic power of one of the world's most feared and powerful creatures, and becomes also really good buddies with him in the process. Talk about a real homie move here, Veldra. You really are a day one best buddy. But anyways, despite it being the most iconic and powerful skill that Rimuru does have, Predator is far from the craziest that he does. Because alongside the use of Predator, Rimuru also gains the ability to use Mimicry, and this serves as one of Rimuru's other key abilities. Through Mimicry, Rimuru can transform and take on the appearance of any creature that he consumes with Predator. And before he transforms all his skills up to ultimate abilities, which I promise I will get to later, Mimicry in its base form is one of the key ways he's able to use all of his stored items and abilities. But not only that, Mimicry is possibly the most important skill in his entire arsenal for any of his more diplomatic missions. And why is that? Well, turns out that a slime isn't exactly the most intimidating thing or easy thing to communicate with. I mean, sure, Rimuru can use thought communication, one of his other abilities to speak to others, but honestly, when interacting with humans and others, Rimuru needs a human body. And so thanks to the girl Shizu, another person from Japan who, unlike Rimuru, was forcibly summoned and not reborn into this world, Rimuru is actually able to manifest a human body through mimicry, which, as I'm sure you realize, yeah, basically means that he ate Shizu. Rest in peace, Shizu, you will be missed. But thankfully, since Rimuru absorbed Shizu, he typically manifests in her appearance, which in the end is this small girl-looking type of form that you're all far more familiar with. So I hope you can see why mimicry is absolutely essential for Rimuru's toolkit to have. And so honestly, right off the gate, Rimuru already has a crazy basic toolkit, but I do promise you, we've hardly even scratched the surface of what he's gonna be capable of later in the story. And with that said, this next unique skill may just be the most important out of all of them. That's right, I'm talking about the unbelievably broken unique skill, Great Sage. You see, because he's from another world, when Rimuru is reincarnated as a slime, he gained this unique skill. And basically, the Great Sage allows Rimuru to speak directly to the voice of the world, or something like that. So why is that important? Well, turns out the voice of the world is a kind of AI-like presence that oversees the operations behind the scenes of literally the entire universe. And to top it all off, Great Sage allows Rimuru's subconsciousness to operate alongside him to activate, analyze, and use all of his skills at their highest efficiency. Not to mention, it can literally operate on its own in autopilot, a skill not often used, but has some truly insane implications, especially as it evolves into its ultimate form. Which, yeah, I know, I've been mentioning ultimate skills a bunch now, so what exactly are those? Well, we're gonna touch on that in just a moment in depth because, as the name implies, they are basically the skills that let Rimuru tap into and unleash his true ultimate powers. But quickly, before I get to that, there's just one final unique ability that Rimuru has that's not actually part of his ultimate toolkit that I want to talk about as well. And while admittedly it is quite simple, it does serve to be one of the most ludicrous powers that Rimuru has access to. And it's actually all thanks to Veldra's insane magic power that Rimuru is able to use the absolutely broken skill of naming his friends. Wait. I mean, I know it does sound kinda silly, but I do promise you, in this series, naming may just be the skill that puts Rimuru above everyone else. And that's because in this world, by providing creatures like orcs, goblins, ogres, direwolves, demons, and many other nameless creatures, Rimuru is actually able to infuse his own magic power and evolve them into greater versions of themselves. For example, taking a weak old man like this guy and turning them into absolute beasts like this, or taking an already busted ogre like Benimaru and making him into a Kijin like this. Someone who can literally remove beings like 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗣𝗟𝗧𝗘 from existence. And keep in mind, that is a calamity level threat and threatens the safety of the entire world, eliminated in one blow by a servant of Rimuru. So please believe me when I say that naming is literally the single most absurdly broken skill in Rimuru's arsenal, if you ask me. Oh, which you didn't, but hey, I mean, I've got to throw my own 2 cents in here occasionally as well, you know? It's an absolutely wild franchise. Which means that now we finally at least can also talk about Rimuru's ultimate skills as well. In fact, he has 4 of them and they are absolutely world-breaking. Honestly, just having one of these would make him a calamity level threat by himself, and the fact that he has 4 puts him well on his way to being the single most powerful character in this franchise. So let me give you a little bit of context for how his ultimate skills came to be in the first place, and then I'll break them down one by one. You see, Rimuru over the course of 2 years has acquired so many different skills, ranging from basic element manipulations to body doubles and a whole bunch of things in between. But one of the most important skills he acquired in this time was synthesize. And this was actually one of the unique skills that Shizu had. Now with this ability, Rimuru gained the incredible power to fuse together targets into one new target. Cool. So what? Well, the kicker is that he can fuse and combine skills together to create new and more powerful ones from 2 basic ones. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. You see, after using Predator, which had evolved into Devourer through Synthesize, and him gaining the ability Starved from the Orc Calamity Geld, he fused Devourer and the Starved ability to create Gluttony, which is essentially a superpower version of Predator. But here's the shocker. Despite all of the fusions and evolutions, Gluttony isn't his ultimate skill. I need you to bear with me, it does get kind of wild from here on out. You see, during season 2 of the anime, Rimuru goes through an evolution thanks to a ceremony called the Harvest Festival. This is basically a ritual that requires a bunch of sacrifices, 10,000 human souls to be exact, that evolve someone bearing a Demon Lord seed into an actual Demon Lord. And now for those of you wondering, a Demon Lord is basically this incredibly powerful figure that gets sort of appointed at random through a weird vote of the other Demon Lords. You don't even need to evolve through the Harvest Festival in the first place to be a demon lord technically, but to become a true one, you kind of need to go through that ritual. It's a bit silly and a little bit odd, but that's how it works. Anyways, thanks to everyone's favorite almost demon lord, the Orc Calamity here, Rimuru had this seed inside of it. That sounds so wrong. Anyways, through the Harvest Festival, Rimuru does the monstrous act of evolving into an actual true demon lord, and in doing so, automatically using Synthesize to combine and evolve all of his previous skills into the 4 ultimate skills I've been alluding to this entire time. Alright, that was a lot, but needless to say, the whole point is when Rimuru becomes a demon lord, he combines and evolves all of his techniques into these 4 ultimate skills. Finally, they're called 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗣𝗟𝗘𝗧, Lord of Gluttony, Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, Uriel, Lord of Vows, and lastly, everyone's favorite big daddy dragon, 𝗖𝗓𝗓, Lord of Storms. And with the exception of 𝗖𝗓𝗓, they are all named after angels or demons, which is a really cool touch if you ask me personally. But without any more waiting, I'm gonna break down each one of these ultimate skills and its components so you can fully understand the true insanity that are these ultimate skills. Starting with the creepiest ability of all, 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗣𝗠𝗅. And as I previously mentioned, 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗠𝗅 is basically the strongest iteration of Rimuru's original unique skill Predator and Mimicry. However, they've now been fused into this one insanely crazy broken skill. It appears as this dark ink-like substance that spreads and consumes everything in its path. You know, I guess it's a quite fitting aesthetic for a power named after the literal prince of hell, 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗅. And actually, while 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗅 is sometimes used interchangeably with Satan or the devil, in demonology, technically, it is one of the 7 great demon lords who, get this, represents gluttony and envy. Well, I guess kind of starting to see where that name comes from, huh? Good on you, Rimuru. Having accurately named abilities is something that I personally can really vibe with, but through the use of 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗅, Rimuru can now absorb nearly anything that his opponents can throw at him, even his whole opponent, I guess. He first stores them and their abilities in his stomach and then can use another skill, Isolation, to sort away harmful or unnecessary things for analysis through Raphael. And when I say that he can consume most things, I really mean it. I mean, Rimuru can absorb organic matter, inorganic matter, other creature/people skills, and even magic itself. But wait, that's not all. I've got an even crazier thing to tell you, because Food Chain is an ability inside of 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗅 that amplifies the strength of his entire army. Because of this ability, whenever Rimuru grows in power, so does each of his subordinates, and vice versa. It's kind of like using the XP share in Pokemon, if you know what I mean, only that this case it also makes the trainer stronger. In other words, it's pretty awesome. And it also allows him to grant his own abilities to those who are compatible within his ranks, and without absorbing them, he can copy any of their skills for himself as well. To put it simply, sharing is caring, and Rimuru definitely does share a lot. Oh, not to mention people's souls. I mean, that's not dark at all. Not in the slightest. Totally just super chill there, slime. Super chill. Regardless of that, 𝗖𝗖𝗠𝗣𝗅 makes Rimuru nearly impossible to hit with anything if you aren't fast enough. But honestly, it's far from being his most impressive unique skill. The real world altering stuff is yet to come. But before we can get to that, we have to talk about his other most notable skill, which, if you remember, was the Great Sage, eventually finding itself evolving into Raphael, Lord of Wisdom. And with that, Rimuru's mind transcends beyond the regular mortal plane, which is just a fancy way to say that his mind is now on a completely different level. Now, Raphael is, as you probably guessed, named after the Archangel Raphael, which honestly, again, makes a whole lot of sense because all of the godlike and divine ability Rimuru has are all combined into Raphael with his ultimate skill. For example, Raphael grants him the ability All of Creation, which is basically the final evolution of Great Sage. I'm pretty on the nose there with all the divine power stuff, huh? Not exactly subtle, but it does make sense, because it's a skill that allows Rimuru to understand pretty much anything, so long as he can perceive it and has just the most basic understanding of it. But really, that's just scratching the surface, because Raphael is truly broken. You see, through analytical appraisal, Rimuru can perform a full scan of anything's entire composition so long as he is able to touch it. It's then sent back to him, and through this, he then is able to learn information such as the material composition of a target, the amount of magicules it possesses, and if they're under the effects of skills or any type of magic, which becomes pretty damn useful even if he ignores it. Because seriously, for having world-dominating powers, Rimuru's real weakness is that he actively ignores them sometimes, which, I mean, I guess speaks for his character, question mark. But anyways, I'm nowhere near done with Raphael yet, because he can also predict future attacks using it, and with Chant Annulment, he can use any of his own abilities without having to say their names. Even though he still does when he's feeling, you know, a little bit extra. Not to mention, he also has Alteration, which allows him to modify and evolve his skills whenever necessary. Which, when thinking about it, does make a lot of sense, because Synthesize and Separate, Shizu's unique skills, also ended up getting merged into Raphael. We have talked about Synthesize, but Separate does exactly what you would think. It kind of lets Rimuru part things and even remove skills from people, so long as they aren't literally bound to their soul, that is. And I hope you're starting to see why Raphael alone is an ultimate skill that could help someone dominate the entire world, but I haven't even gotten to the two most terrifying abilities. And those two are Parallel Operation and Thought Acceleration, which I promise are two skills that make Raphael a nightmare of an ability. Okay, so Parallel Operation basically allows Raphael to do anything I've just mentioned alongside Rimuru's conscious thoughts. Yeah, that's right. It means that Rimuru doesn't have to actively do any of what I just mentioned. He can just hand over responsibility and mind-bending abilities to his own subconscious to deal with instead. It's really beyond comprehension powerful, but not bone-shakingly scary quite yet. You know what is, though? Thought Acceleration, because this allows Rimuru to alter his own perception of time itself, meaning he overclocks his brain to see and operate at truly incredible speeds. Sounds like a pretty standard shonen ability, right? Well, yeah, but what if I told you that he could do it to other people as well? Yeah, Rimuru definitely lives up to his Demon Slime title, because during his fight with the Demon Lord Clayman, Rimuru uses Thought Acceleration to force Clayman to process his agonizing death for what felt like an eternity in just a brief moment. And I'm sorry, I know this is generally a lighthearted show, but can we just take a moment to realize how absolutely horrifying that ability is? He can basically sentence people to eternal suffering at will. I mean, sure, like abilities like Genjutsu Naruto or something like that do something similar, but they have such specific constraints on how they're actually activated, and Rimuru just taps someone on the shoulder and goes, "Suffer forever," and then smiles and walks away as a cute girl. Nightmare fuel, if you ask me. Truly, it's safe to say you shouldn't cross this slime. And now, while Raphael is truly terrifying, I would argue that this next skill is the one that you have all been waiting for. One that lets Rimuru bend the laws of reality to his own control. Because it's finally time to talk about the ultimate skill, Uriel, Lord of Vows. But before we get to those absolutely cosmic level abilities, why is it named that way? Since we've covered Beelzebub and Raphael, who is Uriel? Well, even though sometimes Uriel is depicted as the Angel of Wisdom, Uriel is also known as the Archangel of Repentance, standing at either the Gate of Eden with his fiery sword or watching over the world and over Tartarus, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that he's watching over the depths of hell himself. So yeah, needless to say, he's not the joking around type of guy, and the abilities that Rimuru has with Uriel make a lot of sense when you consider all of what I've just said. Because it is through Uriel that Rimuru can bend reality itself to his own desires. Now, that's mostly thanks to his two skills, Law Manipulation and Spatial Domination. with them, the material world is nothing more than a playground to our dear slime overlords. You see, law manipulation is the final fusion form of all the various element and reality creating skills that Rimuru has acquired over his time as a slime. I'm talking about manipulating fire, earth, wind, space, and water, stuff like that, but that's far from being it, because thanks to his fusions and advancements of abilities, Rimuru can use completely different laws of physics than exist in nature. For example, being Rimuru Tempest, he does have to have some truly terrifying unique powers. And while those typically take the form of his Black Flame Thunder, which is black flames and lightning that his subordinates like Benimaru and Renga tend to use as well. But beyond just that, Rimuru can even use magic manipulation and control gravity as well. Abilities that he uses to sense, see, and even fly around. Like, the universe truly bends to his own will. On the other hand, law manipulation is honestly one of the most broken and unfair skills I've personally ever heard of anywhere, but it's only half of Uriel's craziest powers, because by fusing a variety of other skills and some of Raphael's help as well, Rimuru also has spatial domination. And this crazy power basically allows him to bend space itself, creating teleportation magic that lets him move himself and even entire armies wherever he wants to go. Meaning that there's literally nowhere safe from this slime. Nowhere. And yes, while those are two wild skills to have, Rimuru can also use the Infinity Prison and Universal Barrier techniques to seal off any of his opponents, or create barriers to keep them contained so he can fight them on whatever terms that he personally sees fit. Though Infinity Prison is like a whole other story, as it is a unique skill that even kept Veldra at bay for hundreds of years. Basically, through analysis and synthesis, Rimuru was able to acquire its properties and convert them to be the basis for Uriel. And hey, I tried to tell you that Rimuru was a disgustingly broken little slime. I really tried, but honestly, we're not done yet. Because as I just mentioned, Veldra is also an ultimate skill. You see, after breaking through Infinity Prison, Rimuru basically created a duplicate body with his skill enhanced body double to give his good pal Veldra a host form to inhabit. But that doesn't mean that he lost all of that power. You see, since Veldra was soul transferred into that body, Rimuru was able to consume his body and then gain access to all of his abilities, even if some of his overwhelming power is somewhat gone. Meaning that thanks to the big bad Storm Dragon, some of the abilities that Rimuru has gained are Storm Dragon Release, Storm Dragon Restoration, and Storm Magic itself. With Release, Rimuru crafts a somewhat parallel existence that basically lets Veldra, alongside his full power, exist alongside Rimuru in the outside world. He basically puts all of the Veldra energy into that version, and with his kind permission, can reabsorb it at will as well. He can also use Storm Dragon Summon to bring Veldra to his side whenever he wants to, and Veldra can just do that if he wants to do as well, because that is some serious BFF energy that we've got going on here. But that's not all, because Restoration keeps Veldra's memories inside of Rimuru, which means that as long as Rimuru is alive, Veldra is as well. And thanks to his Storm Magic skill, Rimuru also has the ability to use Veldra's literal storm powers, which I can't even believe I get to say this. Let Rimuru use two absolutely broken abilities. Like, I'm serious. Thanks to Veldra, Rimuru can actually use the Hadoken and the Kamehameha. I mean, look, I'm not even kidding. It's just awesome. Veldra is a huge weep, it turns out, and thanks to that, his Storm Magic manifests in some very shonen-y ways, to say the least. But even with all of Rimuru's ultimate skills covered now, of course he's still got a few other insane tricks up his gooey and quite slimy sleeves. For example, Rimuru basically has resistance to basically all types of damage, with the one exception being damage to the soul itself. Next, thanks to his summoning magic, Rimuru can summon elements and even greater demons like the primordial demon Diabolo to do his bidding as well, and thanks to that, he can even summon the great fire elemental Ifrit, a foe who nearly killed Shizu, who now just bends to Rimuru alone. And then, since Rimuru is now a demon lord, he has access to the demon lord's haki as well, which for all of you One Piece fans is essentially his demon conqueror's haki, I guess. He can impose his demonic will in a near physical form to terrify his opponents at the drop of a dime. Which honestly, no wonder that with all of these skills, Rimuru was able to create a fully functioning nation all by himself, becoming the leader of the Jura Tempest Alliance and using his ultimate power of friendship, arguably one of Rimuru's greatest powers, to form his army and allies. Yeah, it's a bit corny, but since Rimuru is just a really great guy, it really enables him to amass a fighting force of allies that are incredibly powerful, though, as you can imagine, Rimuru is far from the only incredibly broken shonen protagonist. I mean, I even brought up a few in this review, and if you want to see how Rimuru holds up against some of the other crazy shonen main characters, you can check out that video right here. With that being said, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of his abilities, please subscribe, hit the little bell icon, it does help the channel, and with that being said, I hopefully see you in the next one.